Hello and welcome to the No Hesitations podcast. We are your co-hosts.
Kristen Marvin with Solutions by Kristen.
And Nick Spinelli. That's me.
We talk about all things leadership, successes, challenges, and every topic in between, with the goal of helping you become a better leader.
So join the conversation each week on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you find your podcasts, because there is no time like the present to listen in and level up. Kristen, we got a double header today. Who are we welcoming onto the show?
Double header. This week we are welcoming Janos and Ben Wilder to the show. Father and son duo. I figured it might be important for people to know why they're both on the show and how they know each other. So we can talk a little bit more about that as we journey on today, but just thrilled to have you both on. Thank you so much for joining us. A little bit of background on both gentlemen. Chef Janos boasts an impressive culinary career, having earned 12 James Beard Award nominations and clinched the prestigious James Beard Award for Top Chef in the Southwest in 2000. His culinary journey began during his teenage years at a local pizza parlor, and he continued to hone his skills throughout high school and college, working in a variety of restaurants across Northern California, Nashville, Tennessee, and Boulder, Colorado. Over the course of 4 decades, he has owned 5 restaurants, lent his expertise to numerous successful dining establishments as a consultant, and authored 2 acclaimed cookbooks. Janos is national renown as a trailblazer and innovator in the Southwest Cuisine, and is rooted in his unwavering passion for French culinary traditions and his commitment to utilizing locally sourced ingredients, both of which have been fundamental to his success. I will get this right. Now breaking his retirement, Janos embarks on an exciting new venture called Studio Janos, and today he's going to share more about this exciting project. Nick?
Janos, that is an absolutely loaded resume, and I don't know if an hour is enough, but we'll do what we can with it. I'm really excited to hear more. Ben, on the other hand, is a biogeographer, botanist, and desert ecologist whose research looks at the origin and future of the Sonoran Desert. He is co-founder and director of the Next Generation Sonoran Desert Researchers, otherwise known as NGen, and his scientific and conservation efforts strive to combine multiple disciplines and perspectives to better understand and care for the desert that drives his passion.
Nick and I were so excited to have both of you on the show because you are both in industries that are very, very near and dear to our heart. So we're super excited to share the conversation today revolving around the hurdles and insights that both of you have encountered as you've navigated transitions in your respective careers, and talk about where you're at today. Janos, I know last week when we were catching up, we were talking a little bit about the Michelin Awards coming to Colorado.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about, as we were watching the Michelin stream on YouTube and knowing some close friends that have gotten some recommendations and got some awards, I was really thinking about just the level of excitement that they've been going through with their teams, receiving the letters in the mail, being invited to the gala, and just the nerves around what's going to happen, how is this going to impact my business, what do we need to do? And I just thought it was really timely and wanted to have you share a little bit about what it was like for you to win the James Beard Award. I mean, the nominations, 12 nominations, so incredible. But in that moment where you won, what did that transition look like for your business and the community of Tucson and for yourself?
Yeah, that was, obviously incredibly exciting. And, there was all those nominations are a really good thing. People think, oh my gosh, where you're always the bridesmaid. Oh, you're always the bridesmaid, which is awesome because you always get to go to the wedding. And so every year you would be able to go. They were held in New York at that time. Go back to New York, and what a wonderful weekend it was always in New York. And then to win that award was really very meaningful, and personally for me and for my team, because it was sort of the culmination of all of our work, and not that it ended, but it certainly was a reflection of all the work that had gone in in the years of really trying to create, which is a very sort of separate identity for ourselves here in Tucson, and really build that identity based on where we were, what was our heritage, what were the ingredients that we used, and not really playing on the same playing field as, our friends in New York and Chicago and other places, because we wanted to create our identity organically from where we were. And so that made a difference because it got better exposure. But for me, a lot of people have used the Beard Awards as a sort of a launching place. I didn't see it that way. I saw that as, again, a reflection of what we had been doing, but I felt fully launched and wasn't looking for bigger markets to conquer or for expansion. Just it was a validation, and I didn't try to parlay that into anything else, which a lot of people try to do and do very successfully, because the Beard Awards is such a well-known and prominent award, probably the most, they call it like the Oscars of the food industry. It is in that way. And so in many ways, that's becomes an individual award, while the Michelin Guide is the award for the restaurant. That's the Michelin Guide is the gold standard of restaurants. And when I felt that I needed to really burnish my skills, that's what I did. I looked up the top Michelin starred restaurants in France and started writing them letters and asking if I could come work for them for free. And I got the most beautiful letters back from them with incredible letterhead. And except for one guy, they were, no, we really don't do that. But there was a fella in Bordeaux, and I got to go work in a 2-star restaurant, and then another one that he had in outside of Bordeaux at La Reserve and at Le Debert in downtown Bordeaux. That was, to me, well before anything to do with the Beard Award. Going to work in a Michelin starred restaurant was over the top.
And you were the first. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just wanted to give a slightly different maybe perspective on the Beard story. So we're a really tight family unit. I'm an only child. And so that was quite, my goodness, honestly, with thinking about 12 nominations, I'm like, geez, Louise, the first one when I was like a couple years old. And so kind of, it's a big deal growing up, and on the one that we finally you were awarded and took me to New York. And so I remember we were there together, and they ended up calling your name, and that was just such a beautiful, special moment for the family to be there, and and again celebrating the successes. But I do remember this was like a really funny story. So we were going through New York, and we went to the Natural History Museum, and afterwards, and we're going to the trying to get to this other part of the museum, and this is the day after the award ceremony, and the security guard says, I'm sorry, you're just really not allowed in this section. And I said, no, hold on, I think I got something that will let us in. I was like, oh my god, like, really, is he about to like pull out the Beard Award and do this? And he pulls out his ticket to the universe that they handed us at the entrance that's supposed to get you to any part of the museum. And it was no.
You thought I was going to bring out a Beard Award?
I thought you may be handed a show the Beard Award.
No, I had the ticket to the universe. That's
much more important. So just
I think we got in.
So, but it just maybe the point was like how in addition to the business side and the teams and what that meant to your team, that on a personal side, what that meant to our family and how we were a part of that journey with you was really beautiful.
Yeah, well, it's always been a family business, and that's that's been the biggest joy of it. That's why it wasn't a launching pad for anything. I was doing exactly what I wanted to be doing. I was doing it all along, and at that point, Ben was working with me in the kitchen, and then realized, well, that's not necessarily the path he wanted to be on.
Ben, what was that deciding factor for you?
Oh, wow. Okay. So actually that has a very clear and Nick, I think this may even come up when we
might have even talked about this. Janos read my mind. I was going to say, you are obviously not a James Beard award-winning chef. You went a different path. So when did that become apparent to
Well,
you? Your own path. What did you take from your dad's path for yours?
took a lot from the working closely with my dad on catering starting when I was 7, working in the high school, through in the kitchen as a prep cook on weekends. And it really came to a head for me, became very clear at the end of high school, and it was kind of time to like figure out what you're doing. And I remember that I had a review from our chef Tom Mead at the time, and it was we one of the things is your prep skills are great, your knife skills are fantastic, but your follow through on projects kind of a little suspect. Oh, really? It's like, well, do you remember the tomato episode? I was like, and then I was like, oh yeah. So I was like essentially having to cut into perfect shapes, like 275 tomatoes or so for a plate. And I remember on like tomato 137, I was like, I'm done. Like, I don't care about these tomatoes. Like, I'm going crazy here. Like, I'm not into this tomato thing. And to be honest, I've kind of dropped it. And Tom circled back, months later. He said, that you can't just drop working on tomatoes. Like, I had to pick that up. Like, that's not how we work as a team. It was just like so crystal clear. It's like he could not be more right, and I could not care more. I could not care less about those tomatoes. It was just like, and I was just like, and be same. So like, it all became clear in tomatoes in the sense that this was not my passion. Like, I didn't love the details. I love cooking. I love the vibe of the restaurant, but it was not all the elements didn't click for me. And from that moment on, I was like, I need to find where my passion is. And now I found it in science and desert ecology, where the equivalent of cutting 275 perfect tomatoes is in pressing 275 perfect plant specimens. And I love those details, or crunching numbers on a spreadsheet and making sure the input of data of island number of plant species on island is absolutely perfect. Spending days looking at a spreadsheet to make, I'll give me that all the time. I love those
I
details.
was going to say there's a dissertation lurking in here somewhere, and I feel like that's nothing but details. I mean, yes, you need vision to
Absolutely.
write one of those, but at the same time, I've seen some of the photos of your expeditions down south. There's details on details on details. Also, those plant presses sound really fun.
And they're great, but let me tell you, that gets rough. And all of our disciplines, when you get in the trenches, you got to have that larger reason. And for me, that larger reason is internally it's a passion, and externally it's knowing that a feeling that I'm making a larger contribution to bettering the world, and what sustains my passion. And so all that aligned for me within studying and learning about the desert, and I've just have followed that seed and the inspiration to this moment.
That's incredible. I love the tomato story. It's hilarious. I'm never going to forget that. Thank you for sharing that
Yeah,
with
what
us.
was it? 130
37?
tomatoes? What was
That's
your
where I bailed out.
It was one tomato too many.
Yes.
Ben, will you tell us how you got from the tomato story to ecology?
Yeah. So born and raised in the Sonoran Desert of Tucson. My parents' house is on the outskirts of Tucson, so surrounded by, I had a Palo Verde saguaro fort with a moat of prickly pear cacti. And
Sounds dangerous.
that, yeah, hey, it's a desert. The
It's
desert
only
boy,
dangerous if
learn
you're
how
on
to
the
navigate
outside.
that. Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Just for those trying to get in. And so I kind of just had, so when I did that pivot of like, and looking to see what was next, I just had this literally was just like, well, what about what's been surrounding me my whole life in nature? And I also had some key mentors and people that have helped open the world to me. A biology teacher, John Mankey, who was at the Gregory School growing up. He opened the world to me, especially on a trip to Panama in the year 2000. That just every second was the most fun I've ever had in my life in terms of exploring the tropical environments there. And then Ray Turner, an incredible desert ecologist, was the grandfather of my dear friend Seth Turner growing up. And once I realized who Ray was, kind of this icon of desert research, he started to open doors to me, and I quickly started to learn from my heroes. But it was seeing and then going away from Tucson was the third piece of it. I went to school at Lewis and Clark College in Portland, Oregon, and I just really started to appreciate where I was from and really having an urge to learn more about it. And so all those pieces combined with then getting out into the desert, forming my own questions. But it just, I don't know, something about the Sonoran Desert just settled in my heart and brain and just took root and is never going to let go.
That's awesome. I don't know if I feel that deeply, but moving here a year ago, I'm obsessed with the desert and have so much respect for it and just in awe every single day of something new that I see. It's just an incredible place to learn and it's incredible. So
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Janos, I'd love to go back to a little bit about your career and really dive into what was the most challenging transition that you've ever been through in your career, and tell us a little bit of how you got through that transition.
Yeah, I've thought about this, and there are several of them, and I think the one that's those that are the most dramatic, maybe seen the most dramatic from the outside in retrospect, weren't the most formative. They were very formative, but maybe not the most. And I'm thinking about it. So I got a degree in political science. And so I studied that sort of stuff. And when I opened my business, I wasn't thinking about those things. When we opened the first business in '83, I wanted to create a place where I could do my best work. That was all it was. I'd been cooking for many years at that time, and I knew that was my passion, and that's where I wanted to go. And I was super excited. And when we were opening that restaurant, we were doing things nobody had ever done before. We were breaking all of the rules. And everything that I learned had known up to that point, I was evaluating. And so when you thought about the idea of having, big service teams and captains and front waiters and back waiters and all that stuff, I didn't want to do that. I didn't like those systems. I wanted one-on-one between my server and their guest, and there's few people in between with interfere with that relationship. It sounds pandering now, but in fine dining restaurants, it was all male dominated. We threw out all of those rules, anything about, rules about sexual orientation or gender biases or any of that stuff. I was looking for the best people. And we were doing food that nobody had ever seen before because we were really creating it in the moment by what was available. And we started with gardeners before we hired staff, all of that stuff from the very beginning. It was super exciting, and people were loving working there, and they were loving coming there. And after about, it was enervating. And after about 5 or 6 years, it wasn't so enervating anymore. It wasn't that exciting. And I was not having as much fun. And I noticed the people around me, particularly in the service teams, weren't having as much fun. If I wasn't enjoying myself, I didn't want to be doing it. And I realized that I had created a business based on something I'd learned in political science classes, based on charismatic authority. I was excited about what I was doing. The first manager was bigger than life, huge personality, and people rallied around us. Well, after a while, that people begin to know you for who you really are, warts and all, and good and bad, and all of that stuff. And they become more concerned about their shifts or the tables or the section that they're gonna get, and all of that stuff starts to take primacy. And so I started to go to a sort of a business consultant, therapist, Jesuit guy who was just smart guy. And various times through my career when things weren't going right, I'd give John Daly a call. And we started to change the way we were doing business because people were feeling powerless in their business. We're making decisions for our staff from the top down, and not thinking we were taking their needs into consideration, but not necessarily doing so. So we completely flipped everything on its head. We began every member, first of all, if we thought we needed to hire somebody as managers, we wouldn't make that decision any longer. We would say, listen, this is projected business. This is how many shifts we're going to need to cover. This is our staff. Can you cover these shifts, or do we need to hire somebody, rather than just bring somebody on? So with really getting the permission of our team, either you're going to work some days you may not want to work, or let's hire somebody. We invited the entire team. Well, pretty much each part of the team would go to the meetings, to all the interviews, and had feedback into the people that we were going to be bringing on. And those sort of things made a huge difference in the way that we ran the business. It made it a lot easier to run the business. And we started tip pooling. Nobody was doing tip pooling, and things I'd read about in New York. You read about from Union Square Cafe, but nobody was doing that. This is the solution. My poor hostess at the door was getting crushed every night. Seat them in my section. I'm not getting enough covers. It was driving them nuts. It was driving me nuts. We decided to pool the tips, so it didn't matter. Everybody was going to share in that, and we could run the dining room with their help, with the customers in mind, not the staff coming as primarily in mind. We made those changes, and those were enduring changes up until the time I closed my last restaurant. We would invite everybody to the interviews. I'd require that they'd ask questions. Come on, you guys, you've got what do you think? I would prompt them to ask questions. We wanted their buy-in, and the tip pooling was the huge success for us and our team, and it really endured for 30 years after that or something.
Was it difficult for you to hire a business consultant for your business?
No, I felt it was like a therapist.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't, because I didn't know what I was looking for. I didn't know where the problem lied, and it turned out that this was the right person, and he was somebody that I leaned on in my life, maybe every 3 or 4 years. And that first one took a few months. We lost a bunch of, not a bunch, some staff. It wasn't going to fit for them. But no, that was an easy decision.
Was there a moment of insight that you had working with him where you were like, this is going to work? Empowering our people in this way and treating people more, like getting them more involved in the business decisions, is going to get us to shift our culture.
Yeah, because John started talking to them individually. And so based on that feedback, we had good guidance as to what they really needed and what wasn't working, what was malfunctioning. And so to determine what was wrong and then coming up with a plan to fix it, I was pretty sure it was good. And it all made sense. It was the right thing to do. Tip sharing's the right thing. I would, in most instances, I would absolutely suggest that. Letting people make decisions that impact them the most is the right decision if you have the right, if you do it properly.
Yeah, and I'll ask you one more question, then Nick, we can shift over to Ben here. But you said that because of those changes, you lost a little bit of staff that just weren't on board, weren't going to buy into that new shift.
Yeah.
How long did it take that culture to really kind of turn around to where you wanted it to be?
I think it wasn't too long, because the people that left were the ones that were causing the problems, right? They were unhappy and making others unhappy. And so it didn't take too long, because we implemented really quickly. We had to fill some spaces. Okay, you guys, first of all, if people, bring them in. We're going to start having interviews, and they were able to participate in those immediately. And we got good people on board with a new system that they were coming into, and the team had to train themselves and train them in the system. So it wasn't nearly as painful as the, 6 to 9 months before that.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, Ben, along those lines, I know Kristen asked the question of Janos in a slightly different spirit, but I'm wondering for you what mentorship looked like along your professional journey, especially in academia. You mentioned some of those early formative teachers, including that one that got you down to Panama, but especially as you've built your identity as a researcher and started to build teams of people either with you or around you, who's really been influential and what were some of those key moments for you in your own path?
Oh my God. I can't imagine anyone that could be luckier than I have on mentorship. I mean, it's humbling. It's like frighteningly humbling, actually, when I think of how much I've been mentored and oh, I just so I'll try to kind of give some scope to that. But like in the short of it, I literally I've learned from my heroes all along the way. And just do my best to honor their gifts and their knowledge and their patience and I'll say their patience again. That maybe underline that. So it started pretty early. From I'll try to identify a couple key folks here. So Ray Turner, who I mentioned, an incredible desert ecologist looking at long-term change in desert plant species through multiple approaches, especially repeat photography and plot-based work, long-term plots throughout the whole Sonoran Desert. He was previous director of the Desert Laboratory on Chumamak Hill. And that kind of then connected me to my first job as an undergraduate working at the Desert Laboratory on buffalo grass control, introduced species that's wreaking havoc across the Sonoran Desert landscape and other arid regions globally. And that then was working there, and I did a trip to Isla Tiburon, the largest island in Mexico, in the Gulf of California, which is the homeland of the Concac or Seri people. And this was kind of one of those aha moments when I was standing on the shores of the mainland Sonora, looking to this incredible unending Bajada on this island, and just mesmerized by what I was seeing. I mean, here is a little Tucson boy seeing the desert, the ocean, completely different culture, just getting inklings of a whole another way of knowing the world, and just kind of wondering what plants occur on there. Remember, I said earlier, I think in terms of plants. And so I came back with that question, and just the desert rat community led me to botanist Richard Felger, who was essentially one of the best botanists ever in the Sonoran Desert. We just recently lost him a couple of years ago, but his work will span will be here for decades and decades and have survived the test of time in terms of its scientific integrity. And one of these kind of 3 to 4 people that's going to shape our knowledge of the Sonoran Desert for centuries. And he essentially, as I was 18 at this time, and I asked him that question: what plants occur on Isla Tiburon? And he said, well, we don't know, and why don't you work with me and find out, and we'll write a book about it.
Oh, that's a great answer. That's the best I don't know you could ever get in your whole life. That right there.
And I was just like, full stop. What the hell is this guy talking about? He doesn't know who I am. I'm like, could not be greener. Like, I don't even know where to start. And so there are 2 pieces that helped me kind of connect the dots here. One was, he said, well, this is how you learn. Richard said that to me. And then I asked of Ray, I said, is there this guy, Richard Felger's asked, and kind of talking to me about writing this book on this floor of the island. Like, what do you think? And Ray just said, that's the opportunity of a lifetime. So that was all I needed to know. Jumped in, and that was 2004. 8 years later, we had a book.
Wow.
But even more immediate than that, how we got to that was with the context of working with Richard, who had written the ethnobotany of the Seri, the people of the desert of sea, went down to meet Humberto Romero Morales, who's the most knowledgeable person of the plants within the Concac. And I was, this was 8 months or so after first meeting Richard. He did not go with me on that first trip. So I'm 19 or so, and I barely speak Spanish. And I go down and I get directed to Umberto's house, introduce myself. Richard give me a copy of the ethnobotany, present it, and you say, you know, I want to try to work with you to learn the plants of this area. And he said, all right, give me half an hour and then let's go. It's like, what? And seriously, he goes, and this continued to be a kind of a common theme for our work for the years to come. He would get ready in like 10, 15 minutes, get his backpack on, then ready to hop on the boat across the island. Meanwhile, I'm taking hours to get my gear together. Like, holy shit, this is happening. And we get on a boat, cross over to the island, drive up, and get to an entrance of a canyon. And Umberto pauses. We go walk up to a trailhead at this canyon opening, and he pauses and sings a song in Quinquetum for the plants, and then looks at me and says, okay, where do you want to go? And he opened the door to a whole world of learning and beauty to me, and we continue to collaborate together to this day. So it's just, again, there's the humbling part, like, wow, whew, me, like, why am I being selected to work with these people and to be given their gifts? I don't know, I just feel so fortunate. And it's kind of continued to go along those lines as I just keep opening these different doors and working with my major advisor, Ezequiel Escura, one of the leading conservation scientists in Mexico, and learning from him in terms of how you take science and apply it to make a difference at the large scale in policy. And now working with an incredible team of over 900 scientists throughout the Sonoran Desert with the next generation Sonoran Desert researchers. So it's trying to, in a nutshell, I think I'm just, well, in the context of that organization, is that trying to allow other people to have those same opportunities and those same gifts to learn from this incredible community here.
Mm-hmm. I want to ask you another question. I want to ask you to expound a little bit on NGen here in a minute, but I actually want to kick it back to Janos first. So, you know, Janos, I know Ben talked a little bit about his inspiration, just seeing your career unfold and sort of lessons he took away from you growing up. What's a lesson that you've taken away from your son, watching him on his own journey?
He's intrepid, absolutely intrepid. He does his homework, he prepares, and he's absolutely unafraid, to his mother's chagrin, and maybe mine a little bit too. But no, he set his own course, and he goes after it, and he works his ass off, and he loves what he does, and all of those things. What more could a parent want? And he and Aaron brought us a grandson. Holy cow, we got it all. So no, Ben inspires me in the way he walks through the world, in the way that he surrounds himself. And this is something that I didn't do in the same way in my career. He talks about all of his mentors. Boy, he realized early on that people want to share their knowledge, and they want repositories for their knowledge. They want to be able to pass it along. And that if he could be the honest agent for that, it would mean a tremendous amount in his career. And so from the beginning, he just was able to bring people in who are the absolute best at what they do and learn from them, and excuse me, and help them to also bring their own dreams to life and their work to some sort of completion, or to hand off their work. That's one of the reasons Next Gen got started, was to give these older scientists, younger scientists, to help hand their work over to.
I think that might actually be our segue for that. You and I talked about this organization many years ago. And even then, I remember being, pretty blown away just by the concept and what you had started to put together. For those that don't know, tell us a little bit about NGen and how it has grown since you first conceived of it all those years ago.
Yeah, I mean, at its core, it's a platform for collaboration across borders and across disciplines within the greater Sonoran Desert region. And so so about 12 years ago, when I was in grad school, with a dear friend, Carolyn O'Mara, who's a linguist, we kind of came to it from a couple points. One, everything was ramping up with division along the border, and we couldn't even have, our worst nightmares wouldn't have told us of where things had gone from since then. But the rhetoric and the barrier that the border was to the flow of knowledge and collaboration was already starting to sever that between the U.S. and Mexico and indigenous nations. And we were getting increasingly entrenched in our own disciplines, these siloed space of knowledge in academia, where, I know kind of learning how to be plants, but I don't know how the heck to understand geology. I'm not trained in that, or how to communicate my results, no less to think about how my research in the biology may actually impact another person and may actually impact livelihoods. Heaven forbid we actually talk about social science and biology. And so we just realizing we're totally ill-equipped to be able to have our work make an impact beyond our space. And combined with, where the heck are all the young people? Is there this continuum of scientists happening? Because given the context of how fortunate I was to know how critical that community is to help bring up and support the next generation. And so we convened of this idea to be one meeting in 2012 called the Next Generation Sonoran Desert Researchers. We held that meeting with the great support of many people, including Ezequiel Escuro, I mentioned earlier, and it was at the Arizona Sonoran Desert Museum. And I won't go too into depth here just for time, but we use the format called an open space or unconference session, which essentially takes a normal meeting of someone standing up and talking about their own research to a dark room, and you're asleep in about an hour and a half. It takes the best part of those meetings, which are talking to who you want to talk to, about what you want to talk to, and it makes that the entire event. And so it's self-guided. And that's kind of our secret sauce, I'd say, with NGen. And so by the end of the meeting, like a magic portal had been opened up where we're in this transdisciplinary space that we were talking beyond our own point of perspective, understanding other people, how they see the world. And we had levitated this other plane and realized that there was a fundamental need for an organization or an entity that can make this space, make this time and space for connections. And we were writing our vision statement by the third day. And honestly, we've been following that charge since that time and innovating in the way of trying to be responsive to what the needs of the larger Sonoran Desert research, multinational research community is. And we constantly evolving to fit what that needs and try to figure out and keep our finger on the pulse of what that is.
That's awesome.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
We had the same thought.
Let's talk a little bit about the future. I mean, what's next for the two of you? What's the new transition on the horizon for you?
You go first, Ed.
Let me hear yours. So after COVID brought a lot of transitions for everybody. And for me, it actually started with you, Ben, and a long hike we took in the Tucson mountains, and sort of like what might COVID mean. To me, you were very curious how that was going to, how I was going to be impacted, and we walked for hours, and that was what a gorgeous day, and. You have just a tremendous amount of wisdom, and you asked me, Dad, what's your exit strategy? And I never had an exit strategy. A small businessman's dream is at some point that they'll sell their business, but that wasn't going to happen during COVID. And you said, well, I distilled it to mean this to me was that, well, Dad, just be open to this. This may be your exit strategy. I wasn't looking for one. And in fact, that's kind of what happened. And through a variety of different ways that are irrelevant really to everybody, but it became, I never forgot what Ben said. So as we pivoted and pivoted and pivoted and COVID, and I was really proud of the things that we did. And then things that happened were that were even more outside of our control than COVID was, because we were handling that pretty well, to the extent that you could, and at least making really, smart business decisions and for our team and everything. I just kept on remembering Ben's words. And so when it came to, I couldn't really beat my head against the wall anymore, we ended up closing our businesses, and it was really the right thing. It was sort of organic in a way, and the right thing to do. And so that created a transition. And I mean, the glib sort of answer or thing that I tell people is, well, I flunked retirement. And I did. I mean, it was the right thing. I don't, everything that I've done, every business that I've run, every piece of the business that I've run, I felt that I drank from it fully. I got everything I needed out of it. I wanted out of it. I was fulfilled entirely by it. And so I wasn't longing for the old days, but I realized during that period, I still loved what I did, which was cooking. The heart of what I did was my relationship with the food, with where it came from, and the people that it fed, and that I wasn't ready to stop that. So I've created what is called Studio Janos, and Kristen, you've been there. You worked an event with us last June. It's a tiny space that has everything in it that makes me happy. I've got a table for 12 people. I've got a really great, perfectly functioning kitchen that's small, and it's a one-person, kind of a one-person kitchen. I have I have a complete video studio set up there. So I can do all the things that I love, be more in control of what I choose to do and what I don't want to do in terms of how much time I want to spend or the energy that I have to bring to it, and still be able to do. And now I really consider it the culmination of my entire career. The dinners that we'll do, they'll be small, and they won't be, you can't call up and make a reservation. You have to book the space, and it's easy to do. You can studiojanos.com. We'll put that out there. And 12 people maximum. And it is, the cooking that I'm doing is the best cooking I believe I've done in my life. And it's everything that I've learned, and everything that I've learned about from the time I went and cooking at Michelin restaurants in France to the deep dive I've done in the heritage foods of the Sonoran Desert and of our region, and combining those into really very personal experiences for me and the guests that eat at our restaurant or that come to the cooking classes there, and the other things that we might be doing in that space.
Awesome. How about you, Ben? What's next?
Well, I wanted to share a quick story about this last year and a half or so with my dad. I remember when you said you resonated with how you still absolutely love cooking. There was a point, I think it was about a year and a half ago. It was in the spring, and you were a one-man band cranking out. I think it was a big dinner. I can't remember exactly what it was, but you had no support. You were just cooking every little element. It was super complex. You were fulfilling tons of orders, and
it was Janos Famos. It was for Janos Famos. Yeah.
And it was like you were cooking like until 11 o'clock at night, and it was like going on weeks on end. And I'm like getting really nervous, like what the hell is going on? Like I thought we were what, this exit strategy thing, like that's not necessarily the path I thought the exit ramp was going to, like working harder than ever. And I remember I kind of gave you some space, and then after like a week and a half, I was like, Dad, like, what the hell is happening here? Like you're destroying, like what are you doing? You said, I just want to see if I still got it. And I still got it.
The
And I was just like,
grind.
I
Oh
was like,
man.
fuck yeah, like you go. That is awesome. I'm so
You
proud of you. It
you
was so
still
cool.
got it, Janos. I love that. I love that. That's amazing. It's great.
Well, that was important. I mean, that was something, in your restaurants, the restaurants grow when you get chefs and sous chefs and pastry chefs, and you realize 20 years has passed and you haven't cooked in your restaurants. And and so when we started a little business before we closed down Carriage House called Janos Vamos, which was food to go, right? And it was super fun, and it was like took off like crazy. And well, it's me. Let's see if I still got the chops. And sure enough, yes, no question there.
Just like riding a bike. I love it.
Riding a bike.
Vamos, you were.
Faster than ever.
That's great. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's take it back to you, Ben.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, interestingly, I find myself in a major point of professional and personal transition right now too, and they overlap in a couple different ways. So I recently left a position at the university that I saw myself being in for a very, very long time, and left for all the wrong reasons, political in nature, and just the political wind shifted from one day to the next, honestly, and that was that. And left on the mutual agreement to move on, and then it was kind of like whoa, like didn't see that coming. Sure didn't want to see that coming, but it gave me a point to reflect, because we'd recently had our son join us, Eli. Aaron and I welcomed him in the summer of 2021 on a beautiful monsoon, and I was pushing harder at my job at the university than ever. I mean, I was in a kitty candy store. There was unlimited potential in that position, and I was just loving it. But I was just had so many irons in the fire and just going. And then about 8 months in, kind of on this culminated at the university, I realized that I had kind of lost my balance, that I had not recalibrated on the personal side. I was not making the space to be there for Aaron. I was not having the time I necessarily wanted to be there with Eli. And so it was like, a couple things. It was like, wow, like the foundations of my life could not be better. Have my health, my family's health, the love of the support of my amazing wife, and we have this incredible son. Like, okay, like check. All the important things are here. The foundation could not be stronger. Need to do some personal healing and take stock of what I can do better, and to think about how I want to prioritize my time. And so I'm kind of at a point where my life's in thirds, being a father, doing my research, and being and directing Engine. And I'd say within the leadership space, I'm learning so much from the people I work within Engine in terms of how to lead in a different way. At the university, I was leading from in front, right? Like I was developing the vision, I was doing all the pieces, and I think that's what that space required. But it was very much from setting the guidepost and everyone following. With Engine, when we had a board retreat a year ago, and I just came back last night from our second one, there's such inspirational settings, working and tapping into just brilliant people, and then being on everyone invested in the same point of how do we do this better? How can we innovate? And the what does it look like to have a paid part-time director was totally new for us. I'd been volunteering in that space before, and essentially they're like, well, we all have we already have bosses. We don't need another boss. And like, we believe in this as much as you. Like we want someone who's leading from behind. We want someone who's elevating all of us. And you touched on this earlier, Dad, in kind of a transition that you made early on in terms of giving people a stake, right? And learning how to give people space to operate on and make it their own. And so that's really the space that we're in and that I'm in, and trying to take Engine to this next phase in our trajectory, in our history, after over a decade now of having that platform collaboration, and what does it mean as the threats change, and trying to incorporate the younger perspective and the new voices, right? We're not the next gen necessarily anymore at the helm of this thing. We need to create space for others. So anyway, that's really much the space that I'm embodying right now.
That's awesome. I love this, just meeting you or seeing you both for the first time. Obviously, I've known Janos for a little bit longer than you, Ben, but there's this beautiful common thread with the two of you of curiosity and collaboration. And we've talked a lot about your transitions, but on the end of it, you both have come out in this beautiful place of balance. And really, you're so thoughtful about how to find that balance and really tap into your core values and figure out what's really important to you. And you are both just living beautiful lives that are just really, really inspiring. So kudos to you. You see, both still got it.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for sharing your story. This has just been absolutely incredible. I don't know if we'll get another opportunity to have a father-son on the show. So we really appreciate you sharing your stories and your challenges, and rooting for both of you and the next part of your journeys for sure. So Nick, anything else you want to add before we take it home?
No, I was just gonna kick it back over to our guests one more time if they had any final thoughts or parting words of wisdom for us.
Well, I'd say that, in life, you don't always get a chance to reflect. Ben and I had that chance a couple of years ago, walking through the Tucson mountains, but this has been as eye-opening and as wonderful for me, and I imagine it is for you, Ben, too, to just sort of, we're both get to hear how you see your work is just absolute blast for me. This has been really fun. Thank you guys so much for creating this opportunity for a dad and his son.
Yeah, I would, the one thing I would add, maybe in terms of the lasting kind of takeaway for me from just as of recently is, amazing how fast things can change, right? And in terms of you have a path you've laid down, all the pieces of the puzzle, and God, the one constant is change, right? And I think sometimes you're in the space, and that's just that you kind of are connecting to that change. And a lot of times when you're not in that space and things seem stable, and then you get rocked into that space of change and transition and turmoil, right? But then the seas hopefully calm again. But it's yeah, just kind of amazing to jostle between those spaces and ride it out and learn. So, that's you and Mom have been there for me in that transition, and it's just grounded by so many incredible people in my life to help do that. And we're also fortunate to have people like that. And anyway, beautiful to really appreciate sharing this time with you all.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you both.
Well, folks, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap it up on that note. So, one more thank you to both Janos and Ben for joining the show and sharing their stories. Folks, you know where to find us each week, as we said at the top of the show, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you take your shows. Please be sure to follow Kristen Marvin and myself, Nick, on LinkedIn, and subscribe to the Solutions by Kristen newsletter. We will see you back here this time next week. Thank you so much.